If you play drums or you produce music, then you'll know how important drum sounds are to a track, or actually how important a drum sound can be to a genre. For instance, can you imagine the drum sound from Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks being used for Pink Pony Club? Although, low-key, that might actually be cool. Well, what about Metallica's St. Anger snare sound being used on an Al Green track? I mean, there are even memes about the St. Anger snare sound being superimposed on other Metallica tracks, but I digress. The point is that drum sounds are an integral part of a song's production. But if you're producing music at home, recording drums can be a challenge, especially in a place like New York City, where apartment living is the norm, which is even more compounded, especially if you're renting, because you have even less control over your space. And before putting up any microphones, the drums and the room are the first places to start. And in particular, considering the relationship of the drums to the room you're looking to record in. This relationship fundamentally shapes the final recorded sound as the drums interact heavily with the acoustics of the room. And unfortunately, these interactions can be negative in small spaces. Residential rooms are not built with home recording in mind, and it's important to know how this can impact the sound of instruments in general, but particularly percussion instruments where the star of the show is a very focused attack. Typically, residential spaces are square or rectangular with parallel walls, which trap sound by reflecting the waves back and forth, creating flutter echoes, which are rapid, repetitive echoes in the high frequency region, and standing waves or room modes, which either boost or attenuate specific low frequencies depending on how the wavelengths interact. This can be mitigated to a certain extent with room treatment, but all of that is really beyond the scope of this video. But assuming you've got a handle at least on the flutter echo, if not, then try rigging up some moving blankets or put up some curtains that are on the heavier side. There are probably still some concessions you're going to have to make. For instance, if you're going for a big open drum sound in a small room, it's not really going to happen acoustically, but that doesn't mean that you can't get in the ballpark with close miking and some post-processing. But before we get into all that, let's talk about the instrument itself. I think it's important to recognize that even though the drum set is made up of many parts, it is an instrument as a whole, and this can inform different recording approaches. On one hand, you might choose to use fewer microphones that capture a more overall picture of the drum set, while on the other hand, close miking all the various elements can be combined to create an overall picture of the drum set. Regardless, if you're recording in a small room, drum tuning is going to matter because the absence of reflections will mean that there's more emphasis on the fundamental note of the drum. Going in depth on tuning and head choice goes beyond the scope of this video, but to summarize, thinner heads will be more sensitive and offer a brighter, more resonant sound that can be tuned to a higher pitch, while thicker heads will offer a deeper fundamental with more pronounced attack and reduced sustain. In whatever head combination you choose for your batter and resonant heads, for recording, it's imperative to make sure that each head is in tune with itself so that any problematic resonances are eliminated. So, starting out on the end of fewer mics, we're going to go with just one. For this position, we're going to use a Biodynamic M201, which is a hypercardioid dynamic mic, and Kevin is engineering today, so he's going to set it up to the side of the drum set under the ride cymbal and level with the snare and aimed at the area in between the snare drum and the bass drum. So effectively, we're miking across the drum set and using the mic's polar pattern to keep the bass drum and snare drum as the focus while keeping the other elements of the drum set in check. One thing to note with this example is that it works best without a second rack tom in the setup. And honestly, if you're needing to record drums with minimal mics, the less drums, the better. Now we're going to try a condenser option and put the Telefunken TF17 cardioid large diaphragm condenser at 16 inches in front of the bass drum and 32 inches from the floor. Let's hear this perspective. Part of the thing to keep in mind with drum recording, especially minimal mic drum recording, is how the drummer is balancing how hard they're hitting the cymbals in relation to how hard they're hitting the drums. If the drummer gets too aggressive with the cymbals, they can start to take over, which can present problems, especially when compression and EQ come into play in the mix. But now let's move on to two mics. There are a couple of popular two microphone setups. However, in this video, I'm going to cover one of them, which is named after the producer Glyn Johns. The reason I've chosen to focus on this method is because it's relatively easy to set up and it can easily be expanded with some close mics, which we'll also explore. The technique involves one microphone positioned directly above the snare drum and the second mic positioned kind of off to the side of the drum set, just outside the floor tom, aimed across the drums at the snare hi-hat area. The key to any setup that uses more than one mic is to make sure that the phase relationship between both mics is coherent. Phase refers to the time relationship of two similar sound waves. If these two sound waves are not aligned, then the result when they're combined is that either certain frequencies or the whole signal will be canceled out, depending on how different their alignment is. In the case of this setup, coherent phase will ensure that the snare drum sounds as full as possible, and since these signals can be panned left and right, the snare will sit center in the stereo image. For our Glyn Johns setup, we're going to be using two Lewitt LCT 440 pure large diaphragm condensers, and to make sure both signals have the best phase relationship, we'll be making sure that each mic is positioned with the diaphragm the same distance from the snare drum. In the case of today's setup, it's going to be 35 inches, which we'll check with a tape measure, but it's also possible to use a cable or a string stretched to the same distance. Depending on the genre of what you're recording, this two mic arrangement may give you what you need, but if you're looking to get a more modern sound or simply want more low end from the bass drum or attack from the snare, this can be augmented with close mics on those elements. For the bass drum, we're adding an Audix D6, which is a mic that's designed for bass drum, and Kevin's going to position it just inside the port on the resonant head. This position will give a mix of beater and low end from the drum. If you want more attack from the beater, the mic can be moved closer to the batter head and angled at the area where the beater hits the head. And conversely, if you want more tone and less beater, the mic can be positioned on the resonant head outside of the drum. For the snare drum, we're using a Shure SM57 positioned about 2 finger widths above the rim of the drum, aimed at the center of the drum, which will give more attack. Let's first check out our two mic Glyn Johns setup, and then I'll add the bass drum mic, and finally I'll add the snare drum mic. So far, we've looked at methods ranging from very minimal to those that cover the essential parts of the drum set. Now we're going to journey all the way to the other side and use as many mics as our interface allows. And speaking of interface, all of the examples in this video have been recorded using the Universal Audio Volt 876 with the preamps in the most transparent mode. The Volt 876 has a total of 8 analog inputs, so we're going to expand the number of microphones used to 8, which means I'll be adding Sennheiser MD421 compacts to the toms, and this will still leave us with 2 other open channels. But before we get to that, let's set up 2 Soyuz 013 FET mics as overheads in a space pair configuration. There are many ways to set up a spaced pair, but we've positioned them so that they are both 36 inches from the center of the snare drum, so the phase relationship of the snare stays coherent, but you could instead choose to prioritize making the mics equidistant from the bass drum. It really comes down to personal preference. In a room like this with 8-foot ceilings, it's typically advisable to keep these mics closer to the cymbals, so effectively they're more cymbal mics, and this makes it easier to maintain a stereo image in a small room. If this was a bigger room with high ceilings, this setup could be raised up so that we get more of an overhead picture of the drums while still maintaining a stereo image. But again, concessions need to be made due to the room. But before we check out our full multi-mic setup with the tom mics added, let's listen to the spaced pair overheads soloed and then with bass drum and snare drum. Other options for the overhead setup would be to use a coincident pair like XY, but personally, I prefer having the width of a spaced pair. If you've got a good sounding room, Blumlein, which is basically XY with figure 8 pattern microphones, can offer an interesting perspective because the figure 8 pattern allows more room sound, which can add a feeling of space and depth, especially with ribbon microphones. Now, just for fun, let's listen to a pair of Cole's 4038 ribbons set up in Blumlein, soloed, and then with the bass drum and snare drum mics added. Now, back to our full mic setup. We've added the Sennheiser MD421 compact to the toms, and when we're talking close miking, there are 3 other common mic additions. One is adding a mic to the bottom of the snare drum to capture the sound of the snare wires, and another is to use 2 mics on the bass drum, so keeping the Audix D6 inside the bass drum and then adding a large diaphragm condenser like the Telefunken TF17 to the resonant head for tone. And the third would be to add a close mic to the hi-hat. Even though the hi-hat is getting picked up by the overheads that is over this side, a close mic can add articulation. Now, as I mentioned before, we've got 2 open channels on the Volt 876, so obviously we can't accommodate all 3 of these additional mic positions. For the first open channel, we're going to choose miking the bottom of the snare. This can really add some additional realism. We'll move the SM57 to the bottom and put the Beyerdynamic M201 we used for our 1 mic example on the top of the snare. The bottom mic has been placed in the center of the drum about 2 finger widths away from the snare wires, and a key step here is to reverse the polarity on the preamp of this microphone to keep the phase coherent with the top snare microphone. So this leaves us with 1 open channel and 2 options. So obviously, a choice has to be made, which is best going to be determined by what serves the material that you're recording. Honestly, 85% of the time, going for the additional bass drum mic is probably the appropriate choice, but if you're recording something funky or a tune where there's a more intricate hi-hat part, prioritizing the hi-hats might be the way to go. We're going to use the Shure SM81 small diaphragm condenser today, but the Shure SM7B dynamic mic makes a nice hi-hat mic, as does the Beyerdynamic M160. Choosing what to prioritize is something that I learned through trial and error, because there have been times when I've compromised on the hi-hat mic and then regretted it in the mix when I want a little more definition. So make sure you choose wisely. With so many variables and consequently options in response to those variables, recording drums is perhaps not the easiest thing to undertake at home, but I'm hoping that I've given you at least a starting point as well as some additional information to help you make informed choices in your drum recordings. All of the examples in this video really are just a way to get started, and as you become more comfortable with ensuring mics are set up so that they're phase coherent and the sound of your drums and your room and the characteristics of your microphones, you can begin to put all of that information together in ways that will help create drum sounds that are going to work for the material that you're recording. Drop me a comment and let me know which mic setup you like the sound of the most and why, and which one you'd like to try next. Until next time, this has been Andrew from the B&H Pro Audio YouTube channel, reminding you to always remember audio.